We begin with NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel in Odessa, Ukraine, NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer in Beijing, NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley in Jerusalem, and Washington Post foreign affairs columnist David Ignatius. Richard, first to you, Russia playing this as a friendly visit between two neighbors there in North Korea, but there's a lot of evidence the North is already arming Russia in Ukraine and getting technology from North Korea as well back.
Absolutely. It is a match made in heaven between these two pariah states. North Korea needs just about everything. The people don't have enough food. The economy can't produce enough to sustain itself. But the one thing that it does have in great supply is artillery shells, Soviet-era artillery shells, which Russia is burning through at an enormous rate. But what Russia can provide with North Korea is some foodstuffs, some hard currency, not a tremendous amount, but some international credibility and clout. A pact is sort of forming with China, Russia, and North Korea, and some sophisticated technology, particularly for ICBMs and big missile programs that Kim Jong-un prizes as he tries to seek, a nuclear deterrent against the United States, or has a nuclear deterrent.
And Janice Mackey-Frayer, Vladimir Putin's relationship with Kim Jong-un is also increasing tensions on the Korean peninsula and across the entire Asia-Pacific region. There was just a situation this morning, explain this to us, along the DMZ. What more do we know about that, where 20 to 30 North Korean soldiers went across? It's clearly demarked, as well as Putin's visit, the importance of this first visit, nearly a quarter century, to North Korea.
This incident at the demilitarized zone, the DMZ, that divides North and South Korea, happening just hours before Putin was expected to touch down in Pyongyang. South Korea's military says that it happened when a group of North Korean soldiers, about 20 or 30 of them, all heavily armed, briefly crossed the military demarcation line. Now, officials were saying it didn't look intentional, but this is the second time it's happened in the past week. North Korea has been sending troops to this border area to do construction work and to plant landmines, measures seen as preventing defectors from crossing into the south. But adding to the tension, Andrea, are reports that multiple North Korean soldiers have been killed in landmine explosions on the north side of the DMZ. South Korea not saying exactly when it happened. They talked about it today as being a separate incident. We have to remember that there are no lines of communication right now between North and South Korea. So information has been only trickling in. But of course, all eyes will be on Pyongyang tomorrow. When this state visit with Vladimir Putin gets underway, the streets are decorated, his face is everywhere, there are banners, there are concerts planned and ceremonies. But of course, much of the focus will be on the one-on-one discussions that these two men have. North Korea is seen as supporting Russia with munitions, this according to the U.S. and to South Korea. Moscow, in return, has been providing aid and other technologies. NATO's concern, of course, is that Russia has been supplying much-needed know-how to North Korea to advance its missile, its nuclear programs, and also its satellite technology programs.
And let me stay on Ukraine and the whole alliance with these illegal arms that are going there. Richard Engel, let's talk about China, because Secretary Blinken just talked about that as well, that China, while not supplying weapons, is helping 70% of the military base of Russia, which is prolonging the war.
So it is an interesting dynamic, and one that has been at play now for the last nearly 2.5 years. What does China benefit from the war? How does it benefit in keeping this war going? Because China is clearly supporting the war through supporting Vladimir Putin, giving him cheap fuel, now giving him a lot of electronics components to use in the war effort. And it seems that China is comfortable, one, to have the West distracted, engaged in a war in Europe instead of focusing on a pivot to Asia, instead of focusing on Taiwan and beefing up security in Taiwan, although it is doing some of that as well. But it is also making Russia more and more dependent on China, dependent on North Korea, dependent on the, let's call it, Chinese sphere of influence. So I think there is also a big power politics at play here, as Vladimir Putin now, in a sense, has to go looking for weapons, scrounging for weapons in North Korea.
And Matt Bradley, let's talk about the Middle East, where I just came from. I understand that Prime Minister Netanyahu put out a video today, just before this news conference in Washington, saying that Secretary Blinken had assured him that he would remove bottlenecks to the weapons. What he just said, Blinken just said, is that it's not the 2,000-pound bombs that they have been using in potentially illegal ways against civilians, but other weapons potentially for the north, where Hezbollah, backed by Iran in Lebanon, is becoming much more aggressive, potentially opening up a new front.
That's right. There's a second front to this war, and there has been since the beginning. You know, this is something that we need to reiterate. This fighting in the north of Israel and in the south of Lebanon is fierce. It's ongoing, and it has happened since October 8th, since the day after those attacks. And so we heard from Antony Blinken talking about this, we heard from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister. These weapons are going to be crucial because Hezbollah in southern Lebanon has an enormous stockpile of more than, it's thought to be maybe more than 150,000 ballistic missiles and missiles that can launch for long distances, precise ammunition. And this is something that makes them different from Hamas, which is also an Iran-backed group. And the situation there has been heating up over just the past week because Israel has continued to attack senior Hezbollah commanders, which has been inviting retaliation by Hezbollah. And we've seen huge swaths of northern Israel set on fire by these exchanging of fires that have been going on. And we've seen about 150,000 people who have been displaced by the fighting on both sides of the border. Hundreds of Hezbollah fighters have been killed. There's been several Israeli civilians who've been killed in this fighting, as well as several Israeli soldiers. So this is a situation that, if it weren't for the incredibly fierce war that's been going on between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, this would be the headline, what's going on in northern Israel and southern Lebanon. And that's why we're also seeing another senior American diplomat, who all eyes in the Middle East are on him, Amos Hochstein. And this is a man who is not a household name, but he probably will be very soon if the war in the north really kicks off. He's been doing shuttle diplomacy like Antony Blinken for the past several months, and now he's in Beirut talking to the government, trying to tamp down tensions, trying to prevent Israel and Hezbollah from entering into what could become a region-wide war. Andrea?
And David Ignatius, let's talk about all of this on President Biden's plate. As you know, in this campaign, Donald Trump trying to make very much of this, blaming everything on everything that's happened since Biden. It obviously had started a long time before. But the Middle East, Tony Blinken trying again, but the ceasefire proposal is stalled, with Hamas upping the ante when we were in Qatar last week, coming back with a proposal that went back to some of the things that they had originally agreed to. And it was almost back to square one on a ceasefire and hostage release, which is so critical. Even as Netanyahu has disbanded his war cabinet with the resignation of a key centrist former general, or two of them.
So, Andrew, you could hear the frustration in Secretary Blinken's voice, I thought, as he was talking about the stalled ceasefire negotiations. The U.S. has seen this as absolutely essential in trying to de-escalate the situation, not only in Gaza, but throughout the region. Increasingly, I think U.S. concerns and those of Israel itself are focused on Lebanon, on the danger of a war in the north. We're now in midsummer. Israeli school children will go back to school in September, and the children who live in those areas along the border have had to flee to hotels in the south and center of Israel people insist that they have to go home in time to start school. So the time to get a solution is running out. The Amos Hochstein diplomacy with Lebanon, I'm told, is fairly far advanced. There are detailed provisions that would take effect, limiting where Hezbollah forces could be deployed in southern Lebanon, limiting Israeli overflights and other activities in Lebanon as part of an overall package. But that will be frozen until we have some ceasefire agreement for Gaza. That's been Hezbollah's insistence. But as I say, as Blinken talked, you could hear the weight of the difficulty of trying to ratchet these conflicts down.